Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going back in time a bit to 1519. And I want you to just imagine for a second a magnificent city, larger even than London or Rome at the time, built on a lake, crisscrossed by canals, bustling with canoes. Just imagine all the exotic goods traveling up and down. This is Tenochtitlan, the heart of the Aztec Empire. And today we're going to do a deep dive into its captivating story. A story of grandeur and conquest, but also resilience. And a story that still has echoes centuries later.
It is fascinating how history is so often just painted in these broad strokes. We all have this kind of vague picture in our minds of the Spanish conquest. But this deep dive is really about going beyond those simplified narratives. We're going to peel back the layers, look at firsthand accounts like the ones found in the Florentine Codex, to really understand what happened, especially from the perspective of the indigenous people.
Yeah, that Florentine Codex is incredible. It's like a time capsule from just a few decades after the fall of Tenochtitlan. So we really get this intimate glimpse into that world as it existed before the Spanish arrived.
And you know what's really interesting is that this story we're going to talk about really challenges that traditional narrative of European superiority. We're going to look at alliances, betrayals, the devastating impact of disease.
Right. So before we get into all of that, let's kind of set the scene. Tenochtitlan wasn't just some primitive village in the jungle, was it? I mean, we're talking about a bustling metropolis, a city that rivaled, even surpassed many European cities at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Picture bustling marketplaces just overflowing with exotic goods from all corners of the empire. Imagine the aroma of spices and roasted cacao filling the air, mingling with the sounds of merchants hawking their wares. Grand temples reach for the sky, their steps echoing with the chants of priests. And at the heart of it all, an emperor's palace, a testament to the power and sophistication of the Aztec civilization.
It's hard to really grasp the scale and the complexity of this city. Especially considering the time period. And they had a remarkably advanced infrastructure too, didn't they? I mean, a system of canals, not just for transportation, but also for waste management.
Yes. A lot of people are surprised to learn that their canal system wasn't just for transport. It was also a sophisticated waste management system centuries ahead of its time. They actually collected human waste and composted it to keep the city clean and fertile.
Wow, that's incredible. So then in 1519, this intricate world collides with this small group of Spanish conquistadors led by Hernán Cortés.
Yes.
So how does a group of a few hundred Spaniards manage to topple an empire? Was it really just Spanish military might overpowering the Aztecs?
You know, that's a very common misconception. The Spanish were severely outnumbered. Their so-called success relied heavily on exploiting existing rivalries between Tenochtitlan and other city-states. You're probably familiar with the Aztec practice of human sacrifice. Right, but did you know they waged flower wars specifically to capture victims?
Yes, the Flower Wars.
Yeah.
The name sounds almost poetic. But the reality was anything but.
Exactly. These weren't wars for territory or resources, but ritualistic conflicts with the sole purpose of capturing prisoners for sacrifice. Imagine the resentment this bred among rival city-states, especially the Tlaxcalans who were constantly targeted in these flower wars.
So the Tlaxcalans saw an opportunity in Cortés and his men. They became crucial allies, providing not just warriors, but also invaluable knowledge of the land and Aztec military tactics. Speaking of alliances, this brings us to the fascinating role of Doña Marina.
Doña Marina, also known as La Malinche, is a truly pivotal figure in this story. She was an indigenous noblewoman who became Cortés's translator, his advisor, and arguably his key to unlocking the complexities of the Aztec world. Imagine the challenges and the ethical dilemmas she faced, navigating this clash of cultures, and ultimately playing a role in the downfall of her own people.
It's a story that continues to fascinate and spark debate among historians. So Cortés arrives in Tenochtitlan with his Spanish soldiers and his growing army of indigenous allies. The Aztec Emperor Moctezuma initially receives them peacefully, even allows them to stay in the palace. What happens next?
Well, Cortés, being the cunning strategist that he was, saw an opportunity and seized it. He took Moctezuma hostage, essentially turning him into a puppet ruler. This bold move allowed the Spanish to begin looting the city, but it also ignited tensions that quickly spiraled out of control.
Taking the emperor hostage. That's a risky move. What does the Florentine Codex tell us about the Aztec reaction to this?
The Florentine Codex describes a growing sense of anger and resentment among the Aztecs. Then things took a truly horrific turn with what's known as the Tlaxcala Massacre. Spanish soldiers, led by Pedro de Alvarado, attacked unarmed Aztec celebrants during a religious festival.
The Florentine Codex paints a chilling picture of this massacre. describes the chaos, the bloodshed, the utter terror that gripped the city. It was a turning point, fueling fierce resistance against the Spanish.
Absolutely. The massacre exposed the true nature of the Spanish invaders, shattering any illusions of peaceful coexistence. But while this event was a significant catalyst for the Aztec rebellion, another even more insidious factor was at play: disease.
This is where the story takes an even darker turn. The indigenous population had no immunity to European diseases like smallpox.
Exactly. And smallpox arrived in Tenochtitlan around this time, sweeping through the city like a silent, invisible enemy. Imagine the fear, the despair, the utter chaos as this deadly disease ravaged the population. This, more than any military strategy, crippled the Aztecs, decimating their numbers and weakening their ability to resist.
So we have a weakened city, a ruthless conquistador, a devastating epidemic, and yet the story isn't over.
Not at all. In fact, after the Tenochtitlan massacre, Cortés and his forces were actually forced to retreat from Tenochtitlan during what they called La Noche Triste, or the Sad Night. But they didn't stay away for long. They regrouped, strengthened their alliances, and returned in the spring of 1521, ready to lay siege to the city.
And by this point, Tenochtitlan is just a shadow of its former self, weakened by disease and demoralized by the ongoing violence. Feels like the ending is inevitable at this point.
Yeah,
But you're telling me there's more to this story.
there's always more to the story. The fall of Tenochtitlan isn't just about military defeat, it's also about adaptation resilience and the merging of cultures in the face of unimaginable upheaval. And that's where we'll pick up in part 2 of our deep dive. So the standard narrative often portrays the fall of Tenochtitlan as this end of Aztec civilization, complete and utter destruction. But the reality is far more nuanced.
So you're saying Tenochtitlan wasn't just completely wiped off the map. What happened after the Spanish took control? I'm picturing like smoldering ruins, a desolate landscape.
It's true. The city suffered immense damage during the siege. However, Cortés, despite his brutality, was also a pragmatist. He recognized that ruling this vast territory would be impossible without the cooperation of the indigenous population. So instead of just razing the city to the ground, he chose to rebuild it.
That's interesting. So he needed the indigenous people's knowledge and expertise to establish this new city.
Precisely. He relied heavily on their expertise in construction, agriculture, even governance. This is where the indigenous elite come back into the picture. Cortés formed alliances with powerful Aztec lords, offering them positions of authority in exchange for their cooperation in rebuilding the city.
So it wasn't a clean break from the past. The old power structures, although disrupted, still played a role in shaping the new order.
Exactly. This detail often gets overlooked in traditional accounts. The fall of Tenochtitlan wasn't simply the end of Aztec culture. It was a transformation, a complex blending of Spanish and indigenous influences.
It makes sense. You can't just erase centuries of culture and tradition overnight. But what about the everyday people? How did they cope with this massive shift in power and the loss of their city as they knew it?
Of course it wasn't easy. They faced discrimination, exploitation, and the imposition of a new religion. But amidst these immense challenges, they demonstrated incredible resilience. They adapted to their new reality, finding subtle ways to preserve their traditions and navigate this unfamiliar social order.
It speaks volumes about their strength and adaptability. Imagine rebuilding your lives and your city from the ashes of a devastating conquest and a deadly epidemic.
And remember, this rebuilding wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about reshaping identities, discovering new avenues to express their culture, and most importantly, safeguarding their heritage, despite immense pressure to assimilate.
This reminds me of how we often perceive history as this simple narrative of winners and losers. But the reality, as we're seeing with Tenochtitlan, is far more complex and multifaceted.
That's exactly why these indigenous accounts are so invaluable. They challenge the simplistic notion of Spanish triumphalism and reveal the resilience and adaptability of the indigenous people in the face of unimaginable adversity.
The Florentine Codex, for example, offers a vivid window into the world of Tenochtitlan before the arrival of the Spanish. It details their customs beliefs, their sophisticated systems of governance, and agriculture. It's a powerful reminder that they weren't simply savages waiting to be civilized, but a complex and sophisticated society with its own rich culture and traditions.
And that's a crucial point. The Spanish, driven by their thirst for gold and glory, often overlooked the ingenuity and sophistication of the people they encountered. They saw what they wanted to see, justifying their actions through a lens of cultural and religious superiority.
Which, sadly, is a pattern that repeats itself throughout history. Powerful nations imposing their will on others, justifying it through narratives of superiority and progress.
Unfortunately, you're right. And that's precisely why it's so crucial to challenge those narratives, to dig deeper, understand the perspectives of those who have been marginalized or silenced throughout history.
So, we've debunked some common myths, explored the complexities of the conquest, witnessed the remarkable resilience of the indigenous people. But what does this all mean for us today, 500 years later? Why should we care about the fall of Tenochtitlan?
That's a great question. And it's one that deserves careful consideration. On one level, it reminds us that history is never black and white. It's full of nuanced, diverse perspectives and untold stories waiting to be uncovered.
It also challenges us to examine the lasting legacies of colonialism and imperialism, to recognize how they continue to shape our world today.
Absolutely. We're still grappling with the ripple effects of those historical events, from economic disparities to cultural biases to political power dynamics.
And finally, perhaps most importantly, the story of Tenochtitlan offers a powerful testament to human resilience. It reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable hardship, people find ways to adapt, rebuild, and preserve their culture and identity.
It's a story that speaks to the enduring strength of the human spirit. However, there's one final point we need to address, one that truly underscores the lasting impact of these events. It's the story of how the myth of European superiority born in the fires of conquest shaped global power dynamics for centuries to come. And that's where we'll continue our deep dive in part 3.
So we've been talking about this myth of European superiority. It sounds like the fall of Tenochtitlan really played a key role in solidifying that idea. How did that happen?
Well, it's a complex process. But think about how Cortés presented himself. In his letters and reports back to Spain, he crafted this narrative of a heroic conqueror subduing a savage civilization, claiming it all for God and king. And this story, it was widely circulated throughout Europe and really reinforced existing prejudices, fueled this growing sense of European exceptionalism.
So it wasn't just about conquering territory, it was about conquering minds as well.
Yeah.
They needed a narrative that justified their actions and bolstered their own sense of superiority.
Exactly. And this narrative had very long-lasting consequences. It legitimized the colonization of the Americas, it fueled the transatlantic slave trade, and it helped to create this global power structure that privileged European nations for centuries.
It's almost unbelievable how one event and the way it was framed could have such far-reaching implications.
It really highlights the power of narratives, doesn't it? And those implications, they're still felt today. We see it in the lingering economic disparities between the global North and South, and the ongoing struggles for indigenous rights and recognition, and in the subtle ways that Eurocentric perspectives continue to shape our understanding of the world.
It's a sobering thought. So what you're saying is the fall of Tenochtitlan wasn't just some isolated historical event. It's a story with threads that continue to weave through our present. A story about power, perception, and the lasting consequences of colonialism.
Precisely. And that's what makes this deep dive so important. It's not just about revisiting the past, it's about understanding how that past shapes our present. And crucially, how we can challenge those outdated narratives to create a more just and equitable future.
This has been an incredible journey. We've walked the bustling streets of Tenochtitlan, witnessed its tragic fall, and explored its enduring legacy. It's amazing how these deep dives always connect the dots in such unexpected ways.
That's the beauty of history, isn't it? It's full of surprises, intricate connections, and valuable lessons that we can apply to our own lives and our understanding of the world.
So for our listeners who are eager to explore further, where would you recommend they go from here?
Well, the Florentine Codex is a great place to start. It's available online. And it provides a fascinating first-hand account of Aztec culture and history from an indigenous perspective. There are also many books, articles, and documentaries that delve deeper into this period and challenge the traditional narrative of the Spanish conquest.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this incredible deep dive. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. We encourage you to continue exploring, questioning, and diving deep into this fascinating world of history. Until next time.